Everybody's liberated. Yeah, they all talk back. Nobody pays anything. I was telling the people in the church in New York last night. I says, well, what we have down there is it's difficult to explain. I said, but nobody belongs to it. We don't have any members, because I don't believe that. And I really think that the most dangerous thing in the universe is groups. Organizations are absolutely dangerous. I made a statement on TV and. About circumcision, and the guy wrote me a letter and he says, well, you can think, but we believe this way. See, there's no way I can talk, because you can't talk to a group. You can't discuss anything with a group, because it doesn't make any difference. Even if you think that I'm telling the truth, if you belong to a group, you're going to be faithful to that group, and you're not going to acknowledge anything. And so we continue. And so there are groups all over the world, and what do? They shoot one another. They drop bombs on one another. It's no good. So here everybody is completely individuated, and a little bit weird, and you think whatever you want to think. And so, do they believe what you say? I say, I hope not. I mean, I don't know, because I don't say anything that I ask you to believe. I'm just opening ideas, ways for people to start thinking. And that's the most critical thing in the world, is to be able to think without pressure from anybody. To say, I see it this way. That's fine. Then that's the way you should see it, because that's the way it's being given to you. And you may not see something the way I do, and you won't see it the way I do. And I'm just trying to open and give you keys as to how you can look at things. Let me tell you something. Right now, in the time of the year we're at with the world and the universe and the earth, is the most magnificent symbol of what every religion in the world is about. Every religion in the world can be summed up in 8 words. The sun goes down. The sun goes up. That's it. You've learned it. You can go home. There isn't any more. That's the key to life. That's the key to everything it is. Everything in the universe. And every one of your mythological saviors, they all went down, they all went up. They all died, they all resurrected. The sun goes down, the sun goes up. You go down, you go up. When the sun goes down, it's dark, it's cold. Things retreat into themselves. When your energy goes down, things become dark, things become cold, things become depressed. You start to retreat into yourself. You'll even start to call it, these were dark days for me. But when the sun goes up, what happens? Just what you see now. If you walk outside, you see the buds coming on the trees. You see little flowers sticking their heads out of the earth, and you see all life starting to come back again, because the sun has risen. The sun has left its tomb and has gone back up. So every story, if it's a Jesus story, if it's an Osiris story, if it's an Attis story, if it's an Adonis story, if it's an Ishtar and Tammuz story, they're all the same. If it's a Krishna story, it's a Buddha story, they go down and they come up, because the sun goes down and the sun comes up. See, there's no fables in here. There's no make-believe in here. Everything is a scientific fact based on the principle of the earth. Based on what happens outside, happens within you. And the story of Joseph and the amazing coat is exactly the same. The story of the amazing coat of Joseph is the story of Jesus. It's the same thing. There's no difference. Look, if you talk about Easter, well, and we're going to do that. That'll be the special message I'll do. But what is it about? It's about a person named Easter, who's spelled I-S-H-T-A-R, who is married to a guy named Tammuz. And Tammuz dies for the people, and he goes down into the netherworld. And Easter has to go down to do what? To bring him back up. And he raises himself out of a gray-colored egg. It's a fact. It's a truth. And that's where it comes from. And it's very difficult for many people to hear things, because their tradition says, well, that's not the way we believe. But the point is, truth should never be difficult for you, no matter whether your tradition gets in the way of it or not. Truth is truth. And so we talk about it. So let's talk about Joseph. And, yes?
Before you go on, do what you did last night, the sun doesn't really go down and go up?
No, the sun doesn't really go down, and the sun doesn't really go up. And that's another thing. When you go watch sunset, you're not watching sunset at all. You're just watching. It isn't that the sun went down, it's the earth turned. So it's all an illusion anyhow, isn't it? It is an illusion. Oh, I'm going to go see sunrise. No, you're not. You're going to see the earth turn. I'm going to watch earth turn tomorrow morning. Well, then tell it like it is. One of the great things that down in Key West is everybody congregates to see the sunset. Oh, the sun went down. The sun didn't move. The sun stayed right there. You spun a little bit. Okay. Let's look at Genesis chapter 39, and I'll show you as we go along with this, and I'll show you how it works. It's on page, what did I say? It's on page 34, I believe. Now we remember that Joseph was sold into slavery. Joseph goes into Egypt. But don't worry about Joseph. Forget about Joseph. Remember, what you've got in your hands is not a history book. You don't have a novel in your hand. You have something that says Bible. When you have something that says Bible, it means it's a mystical book. It's a spiritual book. It's not talking about Joseph. It's talking about you. And if these stories do not relate to you now in 1995, I don't care if they're written 6,000 years ago, I was telling people, this is the greatest thing in the world. Here's the thing in Christianity, with all due respect to it, God bless them, all the people and so forth. But you take this holiday called Easter, all right? Easter, and you take it and you talk about death and resurrection, and then you have chicks and bunnies and eggs and hats and all of that stuff. You have taken the holiday that somebody else originated. You took the traditions and the rituals that somebody else wrote. You even took the name, and then you said, it's mine, it's ours, this is our truth. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's like if Margaret Mitchell wrote Gone with the Wind 6,000 years ago, and I came along and said, look at this great book I have. I just wrote it. Gone with the Wind, I'm going to call it, by Bill Donahue. And everybody's going to go to the movie. Oh, this is a girl. Boy, he wrote. And then somebody's going to come along and say, I think there was a story like that 6,000 years ago. Everybody would say, oh, get out of here. You're some kind of nut, and so forth and so on. All we've done is take somebody else's story. And we've made it our own, and we say, look, this is the truth. But, I mean, at least I think that we have an onus upon ourselves to be a little original. If we want to have a resurrection story, let's make one up that's original. We didn't even do that. We just copied word for word, line for line, somebody else's story. As I told you, that was a day. Easter, actually, when it originated in Babylon, was a day of fertility cults and sex. And the women used to come to church on that day and act as prostitutes in the temple. All they had to do was wear their Easter bonnet. That was it. And that's the way it was. That's the day that we have placed as our most holy day. And that's the truth. You see, what you have to do when you come in here is not sit and stare at me and say, oh, I don't believe. Go to the library. We have a librarian sitting right here, Sarah Keeper. You can direct him to the different books, can't you? Well, anyhow, they have books in the library. Go read about it. Look it up. Look up the word Easter, and you'll go into shock syndrome if you're a traditionalist, because it'll tell you where it comes from. It's a Babylonian fertility rite, and that's where it comes from. Okay, but look at Joseph on page 40, whatever, was it 39, 34. Genesis chapter 39, okay? And the name of this is Joseph, Jesus, the Son. Joseph, Jesus, the Son. Okay. Joseph in Genesis chapter 39:1 is brought down to Egypt and purchased by Potiphar. Okay. Now we will see Joseph as a form of Jesus. In other words, the stories have tremendous similarities. Joseph is betrayed by his brothers. Jesus is betrayed by his brethren, the disciples. And this is very interesting for you to understand. Take a look, if you would, on page, I guess it's Genesis chapter 37. I think it's page 33. And in Genesis chapter 37, verse 26, look what it says. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Let's sell him. Do you see it? Who wanted to sell Joseph? Judah. Okay. Now, if you would open and turn the Bible to page 804 and look at Matthew 26, page 804. And in Matthew 26, look what it said. And in a way, I'm trying to show you the stories are the same. In Matthew chapter 26 on page 804, look what it says in verse 15, or verse 14. One of the 12 called Judas went unto the priest and said, what will you give me if I deliver him unto you? Who wanted to sell Joseph? It was Judah. Who wanted to sell Jesus? It was Judas. Now, here's an interesting thing. Watch this. Take a look at this. You see this word Judas? Word Judas is a Greek rendering of the word Judah. Who sold Joseph? Judah. Who sold Jesus? Judah. It's exactly the same. It's the same story. And Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30 pieces.